So we had the name, we had the approval of the family, and I had spoken to Mike Miranda, and I told Mike, I said, hey, Dirtyfest 1 was fun. I thought it was amazing. But during Dirtyfest 1, I told him, I said, I want to see Dirtyfest become the Sea Otter of BMX, to where I want to see brands do their launches there. I want to see it be a trade show for the public and be a race for the fans, and someplace where you can learn new things and see new things and just make it be the biggest BMX fun festival in the absolute world. And Mike looked at me and he goes, you're crazy. And I'm like, no, this is what we want to do. And I said, Mike, now we've got Torker. I said, let's launch it at Dirtyfest. Let's make this be the thing. And he's like, you're crazy. There is no way you can do this. And he actually sat down with me and we had a spreadsheet. And I said, okay, we've got 3 months to do this, because Evan Johnson, Steve Johnson's son, gave us the blessing while he visited us at the Black Mountain National, where Bubba had just bought the track. You know, it's USA BMX National. Evan came out. Eddie King came out, Mike Miranda came out. There's a couple pictures of all of us sitting there talking, and Evan hung out with the team all weekend long. And he was like, Bill, my dad, my grandpa would love for you to be the caretaker of this brand. You've got to make sure that this is going to be awesome. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the plan. We're going to make this awesome. And Evan's like, well, hey, I want a Supercross for my bike. And I'm like, no, I'm going to get you a Torker. And he's like, Bill, you do what you need to do. And I spoke with Mike, and I put it on this spreadsheet. And he's like, Bill, we're not going to have time to get this done. It's just, yeah, you want to do this, but you're putting too big of a hurdle in front of yourself. And I was like, no, man, I've got this. And I spoke with one of our welding partners that we do a lot of stuff with and have for numerous years. They build a lot of great product, and said, hey, I need you guys to fast track this for me. We need to make this happen. And we started putting out little rumors, putting out little teasers. We put up the website. We put down a countdown clock. Man, did we screw ourselves with trying to do a countdown clock. Here's the crazy part of it, is I didn't know what to expect when we were going to do this relaunch of Torker. I had no idea. And I knew when we did the Legend frames and when we had done the vintage BMX skunkwork quads and the No More A's and the Azusas for Todd Britton, I knew back then we could only do 25 frames and there'd still be some in the list. I mean, people weren't buying them. It wasn't like there was going to be this huge reaction, I thought. And it's also a risky thing, because I didn't want to just do a old school bike, because I didn't want to piss off the collectors. I didn't want to have the collectors go, oh, you ruined the market for me. My frame, it was worth $2,000 before you came out with this. Well, I didn't want to ruin that. I wanted it to be to where their frame was going to be worth more, because now we're bringing back the history, we're bringing back the lineage, and that frame, it's not going to be remade. It's going to be that frame, and for someone who wants that classic frame, they're going to pay more. But we're also going to give you an option of a newer school version that you can actually go and ride and do something with. And there was a lot of conversation back and forth to where, what do we do? What were the weaknesses? What were the flaws? How do we fix this? How do we make this be a modern thing, especially with knowing what we know from this Sue Happy America anymore, and everybody getting on the internet with a 2-second opinion and, saying, oh, well, this needs to be this way. And I mean, we went through that in 2001 when I was helping Todd with the Azusas, to where nobody could make up their mind. And he was trying to do it as a committee on a forum where, oh, it should have this head tube. Oh, no, it should have this bottom bracket. Oh, it should be this geometry. And Todd finally, said, hey, this is the way it's going to be. End of story. And then we'd have people show up at the shop saying, hey, I ordered serial number 5, and, I want mine to be custom like this. And I'm like, well, we're doing it as a production run, 25 pieces. We're not building, one-offs. And getting into this with Torker now, I was like, man, we're going to have everybody bitching and moaning, and I just want to do our best. And I tried to base things off of sales. So going where, okay, we know we're going to sell 15 of these or maybe 10 of these, but that's going to be all that anybody's going to want. And then we were like, well, we got to do, the Eddie King tribute. We've got to do that. And we have to do a Clint Miller tribute. And I love it when I called Clint and told him, hey, I'm going to do this old school 26-inch Torker cruiser, and I want to call it the Miller time, are you going to be in with that? And he's like, no, Bill, you can do it, but I've got one condition. It has to be the Barbarian. And it's like, oh, yes, that's amazing, because to me that showed so much fun. I mean, to be able to look at that and go, oh my God, I can poke fun at myself that, 35 years ago I dressed up as Conan the Barbarian, or Barbarian as Miranda loves to call him, Conan the Barbarian, and war paint and baby oiled up, and oh my God, you'd never get away with that now. Nobody would do that now. And here's Clint, one of the nicest guys in the world, and he wants to bring that forward. That's why the Greystoke shirt I'm wearing, the last issue of Greystoke, we recreated that ad for him, and he's like, Bill, my wife, she won't want that. I'm like, oh, she's going to love it. This is going to be amazing. We've got to do this. But it was a thing to where I'm like, man, okay, so we're going to do these Barbarians. Well, how many should we do? Well, I've got to do at least 25 to at least break even on some costs for fixturing and laser cutting of dropouts. And it's like, man, are we going to sell 25? I don't know. And then I had people chiming in on forums, oh, I want this like this, and oh, this needs to be like this. And I got the worst of it, I think, because I listened to a little bit of the feedback. But I was trying to do what I thought everybody would want. And we did it in really limited numbers. And those limited numbers, when we spread it out amongst the different options, it actually became a lot of frames. And I was like, man, I'm going to take out a third on the house, and, I'm going to have to invest, anything and everything I've got in this. Man, I hope this really works. And I went to Dirtyfest completely not sure what we were going to do. I mean, you showed up with Nate, a couple days before, and, we had all these frames here that we're still trying to get stickered up and get everything all together. And, we started thinking about the logistics of everything to where it's like, oh, well, shit, now we've got to do this, but how the hell are we going to do this? How are we going to get these frames down there, and how are we going to store them, and what if none of them sell and we've got to store them again? And I was like, you know what, we're going to do it online only. It's the only way to be fair. And Tucker got out there and set it up to where there was a timer countdown on each thing, and set it up with email alerts for people to be able to get notified of everything. And Tucker and his fiance Kayla, they both work here, and they're like, okay, Dad, you go off to Dirtyfest and we're going to handle this. And okay, cool. And we're getting set up and getting the morning rolling, and we're getting some people coming over and looking and kind of poking around and asking, hey, can I buy a frame here? And I'm like, no, here, I'm sorry, I can't. And it turned into a thing where I didn't realize it, but the internet caught fire that morning. And we ended up selling 320 frames in a matter of 15 minutes. It was insane. I mean, it was, I've got my son calling me going, Dad, do you want to know what's going on? And I'm like, no, because I actually was nervous that it was going the other way. I thought nobody was buying anything. And he's like, no, Dad, I got to tell you, this is what's going on. And I'm like, no, man, I don't want to know. And you even came over and you were like, oh, I was just talking with Angela and we were talking with Tucker. Do you want to know what's going on? And I'm like, no, I got to take care of these people. I got to take care of what's going on. We'll talk about it later. And, Eddie Fiola's filmer, Jason, comes running over. Bill, I need one of those Eddie Fiola Torker ones, and they're all sold out. And I'm like, not sold out. And he's like, yeah, they're sold out. And it's like, no, can't be. Another guy comes up, starts yelling at me, I wanted one of those MX-26s. They're sold out. They're this. And I'm like, no, you guys are joshing with me. Finally, I pull it up and I'm like, oh, crap. They sold out. And then we had a couple of people played some games. We had one guy call and cancel someone's order, say, oh, I don't want that, and this and that. And, people's credit cards were getting denied or their PayPal charges weren't going through or whatever. And so then things started getting a little weird with that. And then we come to find out that a guy who canceled somebody's order wasn't really the guy that it was, and that the guy really wanted the frame. And oh my God, he was so pissed off. And you, David, ended up giving up your personal frame for him, to say, hey, let's do this. Let's make it right. And I actually didn't even keep any of the first run. Miranda gave me a hard time. We brought a couple sample frames, and I gave the XXL number 11 to Tommy there at the event. I gave Miranda a frame to raffle off. I was like, here's what's going on. I mean, I wanted to do what was right, what was going to be fun. And then it was like, oh, wow, I didn't even get to keep any of those. Man, that sucks. Well, okay, at least the people got what they wanted. Well, that's when things turned into a bigger problem, because one of the problems that Miranda had told me about in his Torker days is that he always bent the forks. And I know with my old forks, I used to bend the forks all the time. And we used to have to go find, a wall and turn the bike around and bend the fork back. So we did a custom forged steer tube on that fork that was a lot thicker at the base. And then we tapered up, and we set it for a quill stem, but we set it for a more modern quill stem because I was looking at what was available at the time. And, you could get old school stuff that was the 21-1, but I mean, you're going to spend $500 or $2,000 for an ESP or something like that. But there were new stems that were out there that were 22-2, the Haro stems, the Anloon stems, and you could pick those up cheap. And I was like, all right, well, fine. We'll just do it as a 22-2, and, we'll make that happen. And one of the things with Eddie King, he's like, man, I used to run all Dura stuff, and we used to do custom frames with road bike headsets. And it's like, yeah, let's do this. So we made that happen, and, man, people got mad. They didn't like that. So, we ended up giving out some forks to some people, and we made it a 21 fork. I mean, it's still a road bike style headset, but it got a little crazy. And it also became a crazy thing here at the shop, to where we came back from Dirtyfest, and now we've got 320 frames to sticker, to pack, to ship. One of our guys had just quit, a week before. Another guy we had quit. I'm like, man, what do we do? How do we do this? And we were trying to get everything done as fast as we could. And, when we're stickering frames with a small crew, if we're checking the frame from plating, stickering the frame, packing the frame, we were able to get 12 a day, 15 a day out the door. So it wasn't a ton. I mean, we were coming in on the weekends, we were staying late nights, but we also still had Supercross, our main company that we're running and have been for 35 years, that, you know, we're still getting our regular orders and keeping things going. And we were trying to hire extra staff, and we had hired a couple people to come in as extras. But I mean, you and Nate were here stickering frames before Dirtyfest, and you know, Nate was like, "Oh, Bill, I need a template to do this right." I mean, you wouldn't believe how hard it is to take someone off the street for them to try and sticker a frame properly. But the bottom line of the whole thing is that we had a lot of fun, and we put a lot of great bikes into great people's hands. And I get a lot of emails and phone calls from people saying, "Hey, you've given me back my childhood. And I never knew Clint did that. I never knew Eddie did that. Oh my God, Eddie's amazing. Eddie's my hero." And, you know, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool. And Mike Miranda's so funny." And, you know, "Oh my goodness." And it's been an amazing time, and being able to tell these stories and try and get the words out there and bringing back people's childhoods and youths. It's been a fun project. I can tell you we're not making any money off of it yet, but it's been fun to help pay tribute to these riders and to offer the fun and the memories back to everybody who wanted it from 40 years ago.